Dear uncles, aunts, brothers and sisters, in a remote mountainous region, there once lived a woman who spent 30 years alone. No husband, no children, only worshipping a single incense bowl. And every night, she talked to someone no one else could see. People whispered, she was raising spirits. And when she finally burned all the talismans and erased the symbols, thinking she was undoing her karma, that night, the spirits came back. They didn't need to be summoned. They only needed to be remembered by name. It rained all day. The rain poured from the temple's roof onto the dirt courtyard, forming puddles right where she sat, huddled under the sala tree. The girl looked about 12. Tangled hair, soaked pants, arms hugging her stomach in painful cramps. The head monk, Tam Duck, only asked someone to bring her a bowl of porridge, but everyone else kept their distance. They said she had spirit eyes. Around midnight, she would open her eyes and stare at the roof, mumbling things no one could understand. Once, while eating in the ancestral hall, she suddenly muttered, "That man has no legs. He's floating up in the banyan tree." The disciples heard, half believing, half frightened. Since then, no one dared to sleep near her again. That day, the sun blazed down after days of relentless rain. The monk allowed her out back to gather firewood. But by afternoon, she hadn't returned. When they found her, she was curled up at the forest's edge, face pale, eyes tightly shut, yet still clutching a vine as if trying to hold onto something. When she woke, she said a man dressed in brown robes, barefoot with long hair draping over his shoulders, reached out and said, "Come with me. You don't belong here anymore. Stay longer, and you'll get lost." The monk thought she was hallucinating, but she insisted. The man had a silver beard and a gentle, toothless smile. Only one person in the village heard her story and his eyes lit up. He walked with a cane, barefoot, with a cloth tied around his forehead. Everyone called him Old Man Tu Wa, a former shaman who'd given up his craft and lived reclusively on the mountain. He showed up at the temple gate that very evening, staring at the girl as if reading her blood. "She saw me, clear as day. This child is not ordinary." The girl trembled but kept nodding at the old man. Old Man Tu held out his hand. She hesitated, then placed hers into his. Her palm was sticky with bleeding fragments of forest vine. He gently turned her hand over and ran his finger along the lines. His eyes squinted. "Her blood is strange, both yin and yang. If she doesn't learn to channel her energy, she'll go mad or be pulled into the other world." The monk hesitated but eventually let Old Man Tu take her in. He built a leaf hut at the foot of the mountain. Inside only a bamboo bed, an incense bowl, some bottles of oil, and a few old books tied with banana rope. On the first day, he made her sit in front of a mirror and stare at her own reflection without blinking. She managed 7 minutes. At the 8th, she cried, "My eyes are blurry. My face is changing." He just laughed. "If you've seen it, don't be afraid. Everyone carries a second shadow. The weak never see it. The strong see it clearly. But seeing it doesn't mean you can control it. You must learn to speak with that shadow." She asked, "Then what do I control it for?" Old Man Tu looked out the window, his voice lowering, "So that one day, when you see someone being pulled away, you'll know how to pull them back." From then on, she began learning to burn smokeless incense, read words backward, feel the pulse of the dead, and interpret strange bird calls to foresee events. Old Man Tu didn't teach spells right away. He said, "Spells are double-edged knives. If your mind's not calm, you'll end up harming yourself." A year later, on the first full moon night, Old Man Tu called her to the yard behind the hut. A new incense bowl was placed under the old kapok tree. On the table lay a bowl of salt, a plate of white rice, and 3 incense sticks placed diagonally. He told her to light one and chant a summoning spell. Her hand trembled as she held the incense. She stumbled through the chant. There was no wind, yet the incense suddenly went out. Moments later, the earth beneath her feet grew cold. In the air came the clinking sound of chains being dragged. Old Man Tu nodded. "That's enough. They heard you." She looked at him, dazed. He spoke softly, his voice dry. "From now on, you're no longer an ordinary human." That morning, Mist blanketed the entire mountainside. The girl, now 18, was tall and slender, her hair reaching her waist, her face perpetually cold. Old Man 2 had set up a small altar in the center of the hut. Beneath the incense bowl was a square patch of soil lined with thick ashes. He pointed. From now on, this is your connection point with them. If you want to ask, you must offer blood. If you want control, you must dare to look directly. She bowed her head. In front of her was a pristine incense bowl, untouched by smoke or ash. Next to it, a small razor blade lay atop a plate of rice. Old Man 2 said nothing more. She understood. Slowly, she extended her hand and made a horizontal cut across her index finger. Blood beaded up and dripped onto the ash. A cold wind swept through. The incense had not yet been lit, but the ash had already turned gray. A faint metallic scent wafted in the breeze. Old Man 2 looked up at the sky without speaking, folded his hands behind his back, and walked outside. That night, she kept vigil over the incense for 3 entire night watches. Her eyes never left the incense bowl. Near dawn, she saw the incense curl, ash rising straight upward rather than falling. No one had taught her that, but she knew. The spirits had arrived. 1 week later, someone from the village below climbed the mountain, leading a woman in her 40s, gaunt, with blank, white eyes. Her older sister, voice trembling, pleaded, "Please save my sister. The doctors say she's fine, but she doesn't recognize anyone, just keeps laughing at the corner of the wall." The girl observed silently for a moment, then gently asked, "Did your sister ever dig near the abandoned shrine behind the fields?" The woman startled, her face drained of color. "How do you know? The kids dug up a ceramic jar there. Thought it was treasure. They buried it again, but she's still like this?" The girl pointed at the ground. "Seat her here." The possessed woman collapsed onto the mat, giggling. Her hands lay limp, joints twisted unnaturally like a broken doll. "Miss, I'm cold, so cold." Sitting opposite her, the girl pulled out a plate of salt, a few slices of ginger, and 3 sticks of incense. As soon as the incense was lit, the smoke twisted, as if being pulled into the woman's face. Wind rushed through the hut. The woman shivered, her eyes rolled back, and she suddenly collapsed, mouth agape. No one spoke. Everyone huddled in a corner of the hut. Moments later, the woman regained consciousness. Her eyes were still dazed, but the laughter had ceased. She looked at her sister and burst into tears. "How did you do that?" The girl did not respond. She simply lit another stick of incense and slowly placed it into the bowl. This time, the smoke rose straight without wavering. Word spread quickly. The once orphaned girl was now called by a new name, Madame Bago. People brought roasted pigs, boiled chickens, fruit offerings. She accepted no money, only ritual offerings, stating, "I do not seek wealth. I uphold the path." But from that day forward, every morning, she would inspect the incense bowl. Some days, the ash would fall into the shape of the character for human. Other times, it formed a spiral like a dragon's eye. Each time, she would sit for hours in silence. The new housekeeper later recounted, "Early in the morning, I saw her sitting alone. The incense wasn't lit, but smoke was coming from the center of her palm." Since the day Madame Bago exorcised the spirit from the woman in the lower village, her leaf hut had never been empty. Every day, people came carrying offerings, mats, or dragging sick relatives up the mountain to request exorcisms. Some addressed her as Madam, others as Miss, while those who had done wrong mumbled and bowed, calling her Master. Once, the village chief came by, sighed loudly, and scratched his head. "Madam Bay, I know this sounds strange, but, lately, my pond, it's odd. Every night I hear something splashing, laughing, but when I go out, no one's there." She set her teacup down and gazed into the yard. "Did you hire anyone to dredge near the pond?" "Yes. Recently the kids dug up a jar full of hair and teeth. I told them to bury it again, but maybe they didn't do it properly." She stood up, took 3 sticks of incense, and lit them without asking further. After lighting them, she looked into that morning's ash. At the center was a faint gouge. as if someone had scratched it with a finger. They're not splashing. They're swimming up, calling back. The village chief's face went pale. His tongue stumbled. So, is there a way to seal them? She spoke slowly. No sealing, only requesting, but whether they accept depends on who's been disturbed. After that, the entire region regarded her as the guardian of the spirit realm. Whenever someone was possessed, afflicted by strange illness, or a baby cried through the night, people climbed the mountain to find her. The small hut became a place of solemn worship. She added 2 auxiliary altars on either side, no longer just 1 incense bowl, but 3. In front of each bowl sat a small plate, salt, ginger, ash, plain rice, water. Nothing more, nothing less. She taught no one, passed no craft, only kept a girl named Hong to help clean and sweep the tables. Each morning, Hong saw her light 3 sticks of incense and walk slowly around the hut, whispering incantations no one understood. One night, Hong quietly asked, "Madam Bei, what are those things? Why does your incense smoke look gray? Not white like usual?" She rested the incense on the bowl and gently stroked the smoke's path. Each person's incense smoke returns to where they're connected. The living, white smoke. The dead, blue. Someone like me, half living, half dead, gray smoke. Both calling and holding. One slip, and I'll be dragged over. Hong was quiet for a while, then asked, "Who are you calling? Why always 3 sticks?" Madam Bei smiled faintly. Each stick reaches a level. 1 is for the wandering human souls. 2 is for lost soldier spirits. 3 is for the realm below, a place no one wishes to tread. Each day, I call all 3. If no one answers, there is peace. If someone responds, then work must be done. Hong felt a chill, but Madam Bei remained calm. On full moon nights, she sat before the altar, fingering thin paper talismans stored in a wooden box. Once, Hong accidentally saw. Each talisman bore a name, date of birth, even time of death. Some had red lines crossing through. Some were torn in half. The next morning, someone came crying through the forest. "Please, madam, save my son. He's like a soul without a body. His eyes are open, but he doesn't speak. He just keeps pointing at the ceiling." She nodded and calmly asked, "Did anyone in your house tamper with a grave?" The woman choked up. "Yes, on the last full moon. The kids went to the cemetery to take pictures. They saw a freshly dug grave, sat on it, laughing." Madam Bei sighed, her gaze distant as if measuring the gap between the human world and the spirit realm. Then she said slowly, "Then prepare yourself. Tonight I'll call the children back, and see who still has the fate to let go." That afternoon, the air was heavy and hot. Madam Bei was washing a tea set with rice ash when a young woman came up from the village, slim, trembling, holding a tray of offerings like she was about to collapse. The girl knelt to the ground, stammering, "My name is Diu. I've dreamed of you 3 nights in a row. You stood at the door, calling me, saying, if I don't come, I'll no longer be myself." Madam Bei looked up. Her eyes remained calm, but the teacup in her hand paused for a beat. "Did you touch something you shouldn't have?" Diu bit her lip, eyes turning red. "I asked for land to build a house. They only had a plot behind the abandoned shrine. I didn't know there was an old grave there. I didn't mean to." Madam asked no more. She simply nodded, then called out, "Hong, clear the central altar. Bring 3 more incense sticks. Burn the black sandalwood." Hong hurried to light the fire. The hut suddenly felt hotter. The wind no longer blew down from the mountain. It seemed to gather inward. The incense smoke thickened, swirling around without dispersing. Madam pulled an aged talisman from a wooden box. She stuck it onto Diu's forehead, pressed it down gently, then stepped back, chanting softly. At first, Diu only closed her eyes, trembling slightly, but by the 3rd line of the chant, her arm jerked violently, her body convulsed, and a burst of laughter erupted from her mouth. It wasn't Diu's voice. It was raspy, strangled, like something thick was caught in her throat. "Not giving it back, not giving it back. She took my land. I lived there long before she did." Hong stumbled backward. The tray in her hand clattered to the ground. "Diu, or whatever had borrowed her body, looked up at Madame Bay. Her eyes rolled wide, her mouth twisted in a crooked smile. "You think you can send me away?" Madame wasn't angry, didn't flinch. She simply reached out, planted a fresh incense stick into the bowl, and slowly replied, "I'm not sending, I'm returning." The entity burst into laughter. "Return? Where else would I go? Don't you remember? 20 years ago, it was you who sealed me under the guava tree." As the sentence ended, the air turned ice cold. Hong stared at Madame Bay in shock. Madame said nothing, her hand tightening on the prayer beads. Her eyes blinked. For the first time in 10 years, Hong saw her tremble. The wind rose. Incense ash scattered wildly through the air. Then suddenly, Madame pulled a small pouch from behind her back. Inside was an old ceramic jar. As soon as the jar touched the mat, the incense gave a long hiss, like the sound of a snake shedding its skin. The thing inside Dew screeched. "You kept my soul in there for 20 years. You made me serve your spirit army. What more do you want?" Madame Bay's voice was hoarse. "I was wrong, I admit that, but if you keep clinging to the living, neither of us will ever be freed." The spirit fell silent. Dew collapsed. Eyes rolled back. Her lips exhaled a final breath before she fainted. Madame sat frozen. A long moment passed before she murmured, like speaking only to herself. "You're right. Back then I forced you. I was young. I thought as long as I could control the spirits, I'd be powerful. I didn't realize every spirit is a soul still searching for peace." Hong stared at her, not daring to breathe. The next day, Madame took the jar down the mountain, alone. When she returned, her hands were empty. Anyone who asked, she simply said, "I gave it back, but it's not over yet." From that night on, Dew began dreaming of a woman standing far off, hair covering her face. No smile, no words, just bowing, then turning away, stepping into the old shrine. After the jar was returned, Madame Bay Go changed. She no longer summoned spirits at night, no longer plastered talismans on the walls. She took the old talismans down, bundled them together, and burned them all. The incense bowl in the hut was cleaned of ash. The ritual water was replaced with ginger tea. Hong asked in surprise, "You're not burning incense at night anymore?" Madame only answered plainly, "I've retired. I no longer keep spirits." Hong didn't dare ask more. But not even 10 days passed before something strange happened again. It started one early morning. Hong went to the garden to pick ripe guavas but froze in place. There was no wind, yet the leaves were rustling. On the damp ground, tiny footprints trailed in a neat line, from the fence straight to the old kapok tree. What was strange, they weren't adult prints, nor were they typical children's. They were the footprints of a child, no older than 2. Hong's face turned pale. She dropped the basket of guavas and ran to tell Madame. Madame said nothing, simply followed her outside. Standing beneath the kapok, she fell silent, her face slowly draining of color. A thin whistling sound floated through the leaves, unclear if it came from a person or the tree. That afternoon, while Hong was cooking porridge in the kitchen, she heard crying from the garden. At first, it sounded like a kitten. But within seconds, it shifted into a choking wail like someone being strangled. Hong didn't dare turn back. She slammed the pot lid shut and ran to find Madame. "There's crying, right behind the kitchen. I heard it clearly." Madame looked up. Her eyes no longer had that sharp coldness, just a cloudy haze. Like a film of mist. "I hear it too." That night, for the first time in years, Madame did not sleep in the hut. She went to the garden and set up a small altar beside the guava tree. The same place where Dew had once been possessed. There were no incense sticks, no salt, only a white cloth and a brand new ceramic jar. Hong stood quietly, asking softly, "Are you sealing again?" Madame didn't reply. Her eyes stayed fixed on the empty jar. After a while, she whispered like wind, "They didn't come back because I called. They came back because I let go." The wind picked up. In the yard, the kapok tree whined in gusts. Dry leaves whirled in chaos. And then, amidst the leaves and the wind, came a sound that chilled to the bone. The crying of a newborn, gasping. sobbing again and again, as if it had never been held. Hong trembled. Her legs gave out beneath her. Could it be? The old spirit soldiers have returned to take back power? Madame pressed her palms together, eyes still on the jar. They no longer listen to me. But they won't leave. I fed them with blood. Now my blood's gone, and they're hungry. Hong clutched Madame's sleeve, voice shaking. Then, what do we do? Madame answered gently, barely a whisper. Pray that they don't remember our names. That night, the crying never stopped. The garden seemed wrapped in a sheet of cold mist. Every time Hong peeked outside, she saw a tiny silhouette standing at the fence. Head tilted, hair matted, face obscured. No one could sleep. Madame sat all night before the empty jar. She didn't chant. She didn't move. She just watched and waited. That noon, the sun blazed fiercely. The July heat poured down like fire onto the old hut's roof. Hong was hanging ceremonial robes when she heard a jingling sound at her feet. She looked down and picked up a red string bracelet, with 3 old coins hanging in the center. Madame Bay's summoning charm for the spirit army. Startled, Hong ran inside. Madame, the summoning charm, it's on the ground outside. Madame didn't look up. Her hands continued washing small ceramic jars with ash water. I don't summon them anymore. They returned it. Hong frowned. Returned it? Why return it? Madame lifted her head, her eyes sunken and deep. Returning the charm means they no longer submit. They no longer listen to me. Hong stammered. Then, they act on their own? Madame nodded slightly. Her face, usually calm, now showed a trace of unease. I once placed a seal on 12 spirits. Now, only 3 remain. The other 9 have broken free. That night, the entire forest around the hut seemed to come alive. The kapok tree creaked. The air reeked of burnt incense. Hong jolted awake and looked outside. Someone was standing in front of the altar table. It wasn't Madame Bay. It wasn't anyone from the village. It was a black figure, hazy like smoke, face obscured, standing still, eyes glowing red. Hong screamed. Madame Bay rushed out, holding a mulberry whip, chanting non-stop, "Go! This place isn't yours yet." The black figure didn't move. Then, a raspy voice echoed from behind the fence. "You can't control us anymore. Your blood is weak. Your heart is tired. You've forgotten your promise." Hong froze. Cold sweat soaked her back. Madame barked. "I only called you when someone needed saving. I never abused your power." Laughter erupted. Not one voice, but many. Blended, young and old, male and female. A ceramic jar, a coin, a fistful of hair. That was enough to force us to work for over 10 years. "You think we never get tired?" Madame tightened her grip on the whip. "You're not human. Don't speak of fairness." More laughter, growing more chilling. "You were the one who taught us to obey. Now you cast away the command. Burn the charms, break the seals, and think it all never happened?" The wind slammed the hut's roof. The altar tipped sideways. An incense bowl rolled off the table. Ash scattered across the floor. The ceramic jar containing the spirits' names cracked at the bottom. Water spilled out, reeking like rotting blood. Hong clutched her head, screamed, "Madam, they're in the house." Madame shouted, "Don't open the door. Don't look out." Scratching sounds scraped against the door like nails on metal. The hut shook violently. The oil lamp sputtered and went out. Everything plunged into darkness. Then, silence. Only the sound of 2 people breathing in the hut. A moment later, Madame exhaled, her voice hoarse. "They were testing me. The first time." Hong trembled. "The first means there'll be more?" Madame nodded. "They won't let it go. They want someone new to hold the command." Hong looked puzzled. "Who?" Madame stared at her for a long time. Her eyes dry, weary, yet clear. "It could be you. Or someone I once bound." Outside, the wind chime rang, even without wind. The guava tree snapped a branch, its fruits falling to the yard. Smashed. On each splatter, lingered the smell of cold ash. 3 days later, the rain wouldn't stop. The entire mountainside soaked in dense fog. The scent of burnt incense rose every evening, though Madame Bay hadn't lit any. Wind howled through the leaves like moaning voices. echoing in waves like distant calls. Hong brought a warm coat into the hut, set it on the bamboo bench. But before she could speak, Madam asked, "If someone's still alive, but their soul is bound, do you think that person is dead?" Hong was confused. I guess, it's like living but not truly alive. But why do you ask that?" Madam stayed silent. Then she spoke again, voice heavy. "I once did that. Bound the soul of someone still alive, to control the spirits." Hong stepped back half a pace. A chill ran up her spine as if someone had just breathed on her neck. "Who was it, Madam?" Madam didn't look at her. Her eyes were fixed on a scorch mark on the wall shaped like a handprint. "Back then, I was young. I'd just linked with 3 spirits. But they didn't fully obey. I needed a gatekeeper. A living anchor between the realms, to keep them from crossing over. The spirits needed a pillar. But that pillar couldn't be me. I was the master." Hong swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "Then who did you choose?" Madam spoke slowly. "A girl named Lai, poor thing, orphaned, shunned because she often dreamed of the dead. She came to me to learn charms. But I knew her aura was weak, she couldn't hold them. So I let her stay, then used her as the anchor. I didn't kill her, I just took a part of her soul, sealed it under the kapok tree. Her living body faded, and months later, her family took her for treatment. Nothing worked, she disappeared." Hong stood still, gripping the table's edge. "Madam, you really bound a living soul?" She nodded. "After that, the spirits followed my every word. From 3, I raised 12. No other master in the region could do that. They called me the Realm Bridger. I went into trance, spoke other tongues. The spirits stood in line." Hong exhaled, sank to the floor. "Then how did you undo it? That jar, was it Lai's?" Madam looked at her. Her gaze aged a decade in an instant. "I didn't undo it. I never dared open the jar. I buried it under the kapok tree, covered it with lime, layered 3 tiers of stone. But the spirits still remember. Every year, I had to offer rooster's blood, burn strands of my hair into the jar. These recent years, my hair no longer grows much. My blood thins. They're no longer full." Hong burst into tears. "Then, are they after you, or after someone new?" Madam gripped her prayer beads tightly. "I think they want to change masters. Find someone new to raise them. But the old anchor still remains. So they're pulling it back, demanding it be released, or offered again." Hong turned pale. "Offered? Means, someone must take your place?" Madam nodded, eyes closing as if bracing for something heavy. "It's blood, it's soul, it's a vow. And once you vow, there's no going back." Outside, thunder cracked loudly. Leaves fell in clusters. The hut's door blew open. Wind rushed in, extinguishing the oil lamp. In the silent darkness, someone whispered right against the wall. "Lai, open the door. Lai, we're cold? Madam Bay is done, it's your turn." It rained for 3 straight days. The ground behind the hut turned soggy, slick like swamp mud. The old kapok tree had shed almost all its leaves. Every time thunder cracked, its trunk trembled, as if something were crawling inside. At night, strange sounds scratched just outside the porch, scraping, rasping, like fingernails dragging across a clay jar lid. Hong couldn't sleep. She dreamed of a woman in white, long hair covering her face, standing outside the fence, calling out without a voice. Each time Hong stepped closer, the woman turned away, slowly walking toward the kapok tree, then vanished into the earth. That morning, the wind was still. Madam Bay rose earlier than usual. She didn't eat, didn't drink, just grabbed a hoe and headed toward the backyard. Hong found it strange and ran after her. "Where are you going, madam?" She didn't turn back, digging up the jar. Hong panicked. "You can't. You said it yourself, if it's opened." Madam snapped softly. "They want it opened, not me. Haven't you heard them these nights? If they dig it up themselves, I won't be able to hold them back." Hong fell silent. Madam drove the hoe into the earth right at the kapok tree's roots, where lime and ash had once been layered. With each stroke, the soil exhaled a stench like long rotted corpses. The stone layers broke open to reveal a decayed red cloth. Beneath it was a brown ceramic jar, cracked at the base, sealed with an old coin. Madame Bay's hand froze. Wind howled from afar, lashing her spine like a whip. On the jar's surface, a palm print appeared, faint, blood dark. No one had touched it. But that print had just formed. Hong whispered, face pale. Is that Lai? Madame nodded, her voice dry as crumbling earth. She's coming back. I can't hold her anymore. She cradled the ceramic jar to her chest. Her hands trembled so much she couldn't even lift the lid. She murmured like an apology. You have every right to be angry. All these years, I never once offered you a proper right. I was afraid if I opened the jar, you'd never find peace. But now, they're calling your name to summon others. I have to end this. From her robe, she pulled out an old yellow talisman, placed it over the jar's lid, poured white rice wine around it, and lit 3 incense sticks. As the flame caught, the jar snapped with a dry pop. The coin flew off, spun 3 times on the ground, then stopped dead. Smoke rose from the jar. Not much, but dense, salty, and sharp like tears. From within the smoke, a woman's voice surfaced, small, choked, like speaking from beneath layers of buried soil. So you remember my name now? Madame Bay didn't answer. The voice moved closer, right by Hong's ear, though no face could be seen. You bound me, kept me, so they could feed. Now they don't have you anymore. They're hungry, and so am I. The offering tray flipped over in the wind. The incense burned bright red, then went out. The kapok tree groaned. A splitting crack echoed like wood being torn apart. From within the fissure, a pale figure oozed forth, shapeless, faceless, but anyone who saw it knew it wasn't the wind. Madame Bay fell to her knees, her eyes red, her head bowed to the earth. I give back, I ask for mercy. The voice let out a cold laugh. Give what? My name? Or my blood? Madame lifted her head, voice raspy. Everything. Silence. Then, the jar shook violently as if something inside was pounding to get out. A frigid gust swept across Hong's shoulder. She fell backward, clutching her chest. For a moment, she saw clearly, a pale, ghostly face, blood-red eyes, black liquid streaming from its mouth, pressing inches from her own. Hong screamed. Madame Bay lunged forward, tore her sleeve, slammed it over the jar's opening, and pressed a new coin onto the lid. The smoke withdrew. The air collapsed, like a hole had opened in space. Everything went still. After a long while, Madame spoke without looking at anyone. Lai hasn't forgiven me. But she didn't take my life. Hong wept. Then, what now, Madame? She braced her knees, stood up, eyes fixed on the cracked kapok roots. The spirits are almost all back. When they see the old anchor rise, they'll choose a new name to bind. That morning, the dark clouds didn't drift, they hung still, as if someone had nailed them in place above the sky. The ground was windless, there was no rain, but the air was as cold as stepping outside after a bath in the middle of winter. Madame Bay wore her old brown monk robe, carrying a fabric pouch filled with ash, an incense bowl, and 3 old coins. Hong ran after her, voice panicked. Where are you going? They're still around, we shouldn't go out now. Madame stopped, turned to look at Hong, her eyes as dim as spent ash. I have to go. They're not here anymore. Now, they're waiting at the shrine. Hong's face went pale. What shrine? Madame didn't answer. She just stared into the distance, toward the yellowed rice fields at the base of the mountain, where a small shrine stood alone in the flatlands, long abandoned after a disappearance decades ago that no one could explain. That afternoon, Hong followed her out to the fields. Madame didn't ask her to go, and Hong didn't dare leave her side. The closer they got to the shrine, the colder the wind blew. The grass lining the road was dry and brittle, like crumbling bones. The small shrine, with rotting tiles and moss-covered walls, was oddly clean inside. The altar had no dust. The ash was still warm, and a bowl of water was always full. Madame Bay stepped in, set a new incense bowl on the altar. She pulled from her pouch an old talisman and placed it atop the cracked one already there. Hong asked, voice trembling, "This place, is it a gate, Madame?" Madame nodded. "An old gate. There used to be a keeper. But now it's unguarded. They want to open it. Hong stepped back. Then, do they want to crawl out? Or pull someone in? Madam answered softly. Both. Dusk fell. No one lit a lamp. But the shrine glowed faintly, as if candlelight flickered through mist. Outside in the fields, scratching sounds echoed briefly, then fell silent. Moments later, the squelch of bare feet stepping through flooded rice water reached the doorway. Madam sat down, back straight, hands clasped at her chest. Hong looked at her, too frightened to move. Whispers began from all directions. It wasn't clear who spoke, whether it was people or voices rising from the earth. An old woman's voice came first. You held us for years, now you leave? Where should we go? Then, a child's voice. I'm hungry, you stopped feeding me. Then, a man's voice hissed through a crack in the wall. Let us out. Let us all out, let us rise. Madam didn't open her eyes. She simply spoke, word by word. If I held you, I was wrong. If you return, I accept. A thin trail of smoke curled up from the incense bowl. But it didn't rise toward the sky. It reversed, pulling inward into Madam's palm. Hong gasped. Madam, you're bleeding? At that moment, the earth beneath the altar cracked. It wasn't wide, but enough to cause the ashes to tumble. From the fissure rose a musty stench. The scent of ancient ashes, damp decay, and remnants of souls not yet reborn. Then, something crawled onto the steps. A tiny hand, greenish pale, no fingernails, touched the shrine's edge. Hong screamed. Madam sat still, blood dripping onto her robe. Then, a familiar voice, Lai's voice, echoed as if rising from the earth's stomach. I didn't come back to kill. I came back to ask for justice. Madam slowly opened her eyes. I know. I'm here, holding the gate. I won't let them imprison you anymore. But I won't let them torment others either. The wind whipped the shrine. Straw brooms by the door scattered like dust. The sky did not rain. Yet cold droplets fell onto Hong's forehead, one by one. In that gusting storm, Madam Bei sat unmoving. No chanting, no spells. Only, sitting, blood flowing, and smoke curling into her hand. From beneath the soil, Lai's voice whispered again. Then, how long can you keep holding? Madam smiled faintly. Until I run out of blood. A year later, the shrine in the field had been cleared out. No more altar, no more incense bowl. Only the sunken brick floor remained, scarred with claw marks aged by time. No one saw Madam Bei again. Her old hut on the hillside had been buried in a rockslide at the end of the rainy season. The last person to see her was old man Sao Feng, the man who burned rice fields every season. He told the story at a drinking table with just a few short sentences, then never spoke of it again. She was sitting right on the shrine's doorstep, wearing that brown robe, a torn conical hat on her head, eyes closed, holding 3 old coins. I was walking past, about to say hello. Then she opened her eyes and smiled at me, strange smile. They asked him, what kind of smile? He didn't answer right away. He poured himself a drink, then whispered. She said, don't call the spirit army when your heart's still attached to the world. They hear, and they remember. No one fully understood that sentence. But after that day, old man Sao quit burning fields. He switched to farming vegetables. Lived quietly in the backwoods. No visitors. Never spoke of spirits again. Later on, Hong married someone far away. She was rarely seen near the old mountain village again. But every year, on the night of the 7th full moon, someone would see her sneak back and place a bundle of incense at the spot where the shrine used to be. Though now it was only dry dirt and patches of wild grass. On nights with full moons, when the wind wasn't strong but the rice leaves still rustled, there was a thin wheezing sound, like someone breathing near your neck. And, sometimes, those who worked the fields late would say, they heard a child crying, accompanied by a jingling bell. Even though there was no wind, and no one around, the elders avoided the place. The kids, after hearing the stories, never dared come near the shrine. Once, a group of students went camping in the woods and played with flashlights. They ran back at midnight, pale-faced and out of breath. All they could say was, Someone was sitting in front of the shrine, smiling without a shadow. After that, no one spoke of Madame Bago anymore. Not because they forgot, but because they feared remembering. Everyone knew she wasn't evil, but she held the dead. And those who hold the dead can never return like the living. Then one evening, with mist falling softly across the fields, a lost child was found by the old kapok tree, where the ceramic jar had once been buried. The boy was playing in the dirt, grinning brightly. When the adults asked if he was scared, he shook his head. No, a lady in brown gave me candy. She told me not to come back tomorrow. They asked what her name was. The boy replied, something like, Auntie Bay. I forgot, but she told me, don't light incense if you don't know who's going to come. If you've made it this far, the story of Madame Bago has surely left something lingering in you. A reflection on the cost of power, the boundaries no one should cross, and more than that, the silent forces that exist between the realm of the living and the dead, that no one dares call by name. If you'd like to continue exploring eerie, mysterious, and haunting tales like this with me, don't forget to subscribe to Bong Toi Trong Dem, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And if you've ever heard, seen, or felt something like this before, leave a comment below, so that those who've stood near the edge know they are not alone.